welcome to the new series of Centering Student Voice. My name's Candice, and today we have our outline of talking about international students and first-gen students. First of all, we're going to introduce the international student experience and first-gen student experience, and career development for international students, and then we're going to come up with implications for future advisors. The higher education in the United States has been leading in academia globally. As reported in the Ranking Web of Universities 2021, the United States holds the most number of top-ranking universities in the world. Therefore, this can be attributed to U.S. higher ed pedagogy encouraging innovation, excellence, explorations, and independent thoughts in students. The advancements of U.S. education has triggered many students and parents to receive a preliminary education. According to international students and graduates in the U.S. FWD 2021, during the 2019 to 2020 school year, more than 1 million international students from more than 200 countries around the world came to the U.S. to study, which represented 4.6% of U.S. student population. Among the international student demographic, a large portion of international students are originally from China and India. As reflected by the data, studying abroad in the U.S. has been a popular option for students around the world, and the U.S. has been one of the top choice when students and parents are deciding what country to study in. However, international students are facing multiple challenges from different aspects. Now we have our students to share their experiences. Now we have a student would like to share about her personal experience regarding the language barrier. She mentioned that, as an international student, language barrier is always the top concern when we enter the foreign country. I could still vividly remember the time that I had my first literature class in the US. I was surrounded by people whom I didn't know, and everyone was talking about the new student in the classroom. I felt embarrassed and also shy at the same time, because I was afraid that people would laugh at my accent. The air was filled with awkwardness. I could only hear the whisper of unfamiliar faces and almost felt the burning in my throat that hindered me to speak even a single word. The young lady, whom I later learned to be my teacher, asked me if I could do a short introduction for everyone. I stood up slowly and whispered, "Hi, everyone." Though it was not my first time doing an English introduction, I found it difficult to speak in front of the whole class with English as their first language. I stopped and looked down at the ground to avoid any eye contacts as my hand trembled slightly. The memory was blurry, probably because I did not want to remember. I started to practice my English skills whenever I have a chance. I force myself to go to clubs and talk to people even I do not enjoy the feeling of being laughed at. I could still remember that I would look at the mirror and practice my script over and over again before every presentation. It is interesting that I mimicked the accent of people around me, and I was almost ashamed of my accent, even a few words do not sound like them. It was not until that time I truly learned the lesson of practice to make it perfect. Though I was still not quite perfect until this very second. The years of hard work and lesson eventually paid off. When I look back, I laugh at myself for not having the courage to be who I am, but also pat myself on the shoulders for efforts made throughout the years. I understand deeply that there are so many people like me who are experiencing or had experienced similar things. And if I have the opportunity to tell them, I would tell them to look up and be proud of themselves, because their efforts will make them shine like nobody before. The international students' immigration status has always been a major challenge. Generally, international students can enter the U.S. with the F-1 visa. The F-1 visa is a traditional student visa, and the majority of international students in the U.S. are F-1 visa holders. The F-1 visa allows students to enter the U.S. as a full-time student as an accredited college, university, seminary, conservatory, academic high school, elementary, or other academic institution or language training programs. Employment opportunities for international students are under restrictions and carefully reviewed. F1 visa students can only engage in some professional-related work under authorization of the school director or the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. If international students work without authorization, they will be immediately deported and may not be allowed to enter the U.S. in the future. Undergraduate or postgraduate students who hold an F-type visa can only participate in either professional-related CPT, which is the curricular practical training, a temporary authorization for employment while students are currently enrolled as a student, or the OPT, which is called the optional practical training, which is a one-year authorization of employment after students completing their degree of study. International students must complete at least one full academic year before they can be eligible to apply for the OPT, which is a total of 12 months. If their field of study belongs to STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, their OPT can be extended to 3 years of qualifications. If the student fails to find a job within 90 days after applying for the OPT, their I-20 will be invalid, and the OPT will be terminated. Spencer Rogers researched international students' orientation after graduating from their degree program. Their findings indicate that approximately 80% of international students desire to gain employment experience through the OPT opportunity, and some of them have the ambition to utilize the OPT as a route to receiving employment sponsorship in order to become a permanent resident of the U.S. In addition, about 58% of international students expressed their desire to earn a part-time position while they were in school to supplement their income, gain more experience, and acquire specialized skills. Therefore, similar to traditional domestic students, international students also value the perceived benefits from the opportunity to gain professional experiences in school and postgraduate. Another obstacle that international students and first-gen students need to face was their cultural identity. While the proportion of the first-gen students has decreased over time, they still account for about 30% of all post-secondary enrollments in the U.S. The number of the first-gen students very high, but our definition of them is vague. Traditionally, first-generation status has been determined by whether one or more of a student's parent or legal guardian completed a 4-year undergraduate degree. But the definition of a first-gen student's identity should be more than a college graduation certificate can say. Work that does is so essential to comprehend first-gen status as part of the broader, intersectional discussion of student identity, especially given the intensity of established correlations between first-gen status, race, and class. The study of Bittencourt in 2020 has found that the identity of first-generation students could be divided into 3 dimensions. The first one, first-generation status as organizational identity. He mentions that participants consistently describe first-generation status not as a social identity, but as an organizational identity. Many noted that they were unaware of their first-generation status until they were informed of it, sometimes repeatedly, by institutional support efforts. For example, Tori describes her slow recognition of her first-gen status, noting that, "I did not realize I was first-gen and I kept getting the emails. I just didn't think about it." The second theme was first-generation status and feeling of alterity. He mentions that, for many participants, being a first-gen college student mattered not just because they had different familial and educational background than their peers, but also because they have different experiences in college. Justin contrasted her perceptions of the behavior of the first and continuing generation students. "I didn't realize how different the experience was for first-gen students until I actually got here and saw a bunch of people just putting themselves out there and knowing what they were doing because their parents know how to do it and mine didn't. And it's just hard." The last theme was the first-generation status and their social distance. He mentions that, as first-generation college student, navigated the meaning-making process around their newfound organizational identity and the feeling of authority that accompanied it on campus, they also came to understand themselves in new ways. Specifically, they framed themselves as exceptional with both institutional and familial context, and their achievements as exemplary. And these experiences distinguished first-gen college students as distinct from both family and peers. We noticed that the higher education institution has been lack of resource and support to first-gen students. The first one, we have difficulty of how to navigate the academic system. The educational system can be daunting. First-gen college students frequently struggle with bureaucracy. Additionally, they may have trouble locating mentors. Mentors are very crucial since they support students and guide them through the system. Unlike other students, first-generation students cannot rely on hearing about their parents' or family members' college experiences to help them overcome those obstacles. Secondly, lower family income. First-generation college students may come from lower income backgrounds than other students. Consequently, they may require greater loans and grants. In addition, they may be required to work while college to pay for their financial responsibilities, which might increase their stress and distract from their studies. According to the data, financial pressure are the top reasons that first-generation students drop out of school. And followed by that is intensified social isolation. First-generation students' sentiments of insecurity and fears of acceptability that may lead to social isolation, the inability of participate in campus-based social events and remote possibilities, such as spring break, may harbored by limited financial resources, contributing a sense of isolation. At last was the stigmatization and discrimination. Over a third of first-gen students belong to racial or ethnic minority groups. Consequently, they must overcome racial inequalities and discriminations. Both their minority status and their lower socioeconomic standing may make them susceptible and prejudiced. These experiences can result in alienation, isolation, marginalization, and loneliness, all of which they have a poor effect on their mental health and academic performance. Another important factor that we want to brought up was the career development for international students. As indicated previously, internship and practical experiences during the degree completion play an important role in preparing for entering the workforce and the student's career development. Especially for graduate students, earning practical experience is an urgent necessity to be well prepared for the careers. Unfortunately, international graduate students need to face multiple obstacles in gaining internships and practical experiences, such as finding program-related positions, filing complicated curricular practical training applications, and waiting for application approval. According to Durrani in 2019, all paid internships except on-campus positions need international students to apply for CPT in order to receive a legal and valid employment authorization, and the waiting approval period varies from a week to 3 weeks. The general guidelines for applying for CPT requires international students to maintain valid F1 status and practical training directly related to their program. Further, the normal practice requires that students first secure a job offer in order to apply for the CPT. The CPT application requires employers to report position details such as part-time or full-time employment, name and address for the employer, work location, and duration of the internship. For international students who have required field work or practical hours in their program for the study, the CPT process creates an additional step for them as opposed to their domestic students' counterparts in order to gain valuable professional experiences. For international students who do not have required fieldworks or practical hours requirements in their program, the complexity of the application procedures has held back international students' motivation to gain practical experiences from their self-growth and preparation. As I mentioned earlier, international students are required to apply for the OPT visa to be legally employed in the U.S. The increasing population of employed international graduate students also drives up the OPT growth. Regardless of whether the international students finally chooses to return to their home country or continue to stay in the U.S., this work experience can play a very good role in self-development. The OPT opportunity is limited in duration and frequency. Unlike undergraduate international students, international graduate students only have one chance to apply for the OPT if they are not pursuing a doctoral program. As a result of the complex process involving and even trying to gain employment, international students must overcome many barriers to gain professional work opportunities. Moreover, Liu in 2022 mentioned that many employers prefer other students over international students when hiring. Frequently, international students seeking OPT must return to their home country before their F1 visa expires. As a result, employers are reluctant to hire international students for internships because they end up with minimal long-term benefits after spending time and money on professional training. On the other hand, if employers are satisfied with international students during their period and wanted to keep them for longer eligibility to work, employers must sponsor international students to apply for H-1B visa. The sponsor requires employers to go through a complex application process and pay an application fee for at least $1,000 per applicant. And going through the sponsorship process does not guarantee that international employees can legally stay and work. Therefore, employers will not easily sponsor students to apply for H-1B. In addition to all these challenges that international students face when applying for internships, they are also vulnerable to exploitation by employers, such as low wage and long working hours. I'm very glad that as future higher educational workers, we have developed some implications for international students and first-gen students. Like what we have discussed in our previous podcast, the U.S. has the world's largest population of international students. And here are some tips for international students to adjust better in a new country. Number 1, plan the budget as an international student in the U.S. For example, housing on campus or renting off campus, meal plans at the dining hall, grocery shopping or eating out, traveling during school vacations, fee for entertainment, extracurricular activities, and personal expenses, plus a portion of emergency fund when something unexpected happened. Number 2, develop your language skills. You can improve your English with classmates, teachers, professors, colleagues, online tutorials, podcasts, and even TV shows and movies. Number 3, join a society or club. Whether you are attending elementary, middle, high school, or universities, they offer a wide range of organizations and clubs that you can join. Choose your interests and meet people to share your interests. Have fun. Number 4, immersed in the U.S. culture. You can research the social norms in the U.S., be open-minded, and embrace diversity. Number 5, create a strong network. Meeting new friends, academic advisors, counselors, school clubs, and organizations. Number 6, familiarize yourself with local laws. This is important to be aware of because you do not want to affect your legal status in the U.S. Number 7, save important documents and passport safely. It is important to have these documents entering and leaving the U.S. Please make sure that you have your passport, flight documents, student visa, I-20, admission letter, health insurance, and others. Number 8, understand the U.S. university's grading system. U.S. grading system might be different from your home country's grading system. The U.S. most commonly used grading system is A through F percentage letter grading system. These letter grades will be calculated in GPA and is calculated by dividing the total number of amount of grade point earned by the total number of credit hours taken. Number 9. Prepare a valid visa before arrival. Check your I-20 sent from your school and F1 student visa. When entering the U.S., make sure you arrive no more than 30 days before your instruction begins on your I-20. Pack up and get ready to go. Number 10. Try new food from all over the world. There are great cuisines including Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Mexican, Greek, Indian, Italian, and so much more. Go charge your stomach. Number 11. Get ready for your first class. For example, how to get your textbook before class starts. There are 2 ways to get your textbooks, either purchasing it or renting it. Choose the best way of you. Number 12. Get familiar with your campus. Your first year orientation is recommended to attend. It will help you to adjust a new environment quickly. Number 13. Do not hesitate to ask questions when you are curious. Reach out to your friends, classmates, teachers, professors, advisors, counselor, and more. And the last one. Enjoy your time study abroad. Learn and grow in the U.S. and pursue your dream. For the implications for first-gen students, we have tip number 1. Don't be afraid to ask for help. As a first-gen student, it might feel like you have to do it all by yourself. Seek support from your professors and your peers. The first few weeks may be difficult trying to adjust to the grad school environment, but very soon you will find a community within the program. Once you do, I think it will be easier seeking help and support knowing that others might be in the same boat as you. Number 2, don't let the imposter phenomena bring you down. One of our other podcasts will go into more details about the imposter phenomenon, but my advice for this is to talk about it. You will meet other students who are experiencing this, and sharing your feelings with others helps reduce anxiety, loneliness, and instead of feelings validating and empowering. Tip number 3. Research different scholarships, emergency funds, professional development grants. It is no secret that USC tuition is so expensive. My recommendation is that you begin looking into scholarships as soon as possible. There are many scholarships that I missed out because I didn't apply on time. One of our peers in the program made a list of different scholarships that students can apply to. They created a document that listed different deadlines and amounts that UC students are qualified for. I think this will be shared for all future cohorts, so if you haven't seen it already, go ask the program advisors. The downside is that I don't think our international students are qualified for these scholarships. Number 4, get to know the program faculty and staff. Even though you don't have any questions, scheduling check-ins with the EC advisor, program lead, and your professors is helpful. This is not only helpful with the network, but just to building community with the Rossier. Tip number 5, give yourself grace. Because it is grad school, it might seem like we have to give it your 100% all the time. But sometimes it is okay to give less. There are a lot of sacrifices we are making in our lives to be graduate students, so just make sure you are kind to yourself. Some days will be harder than others, and so knowing you are giving it your all and that's enough. Lastly, tip number 6, remembering your why. This is not only for first-gen college students. I think this advice is for all graduate students. Grad school will get difficult at times. You will feel burned out, and it's so important to reflect on yourself about why you came in here in the first place. I think looking back on why and looking forward to my end goal helps me stay motivated and happy. And that's all for our series of Centering Student Voice. Hope you find that helpful.